Now, that could plunge the most vulnerable into isolation and force millions to pay for expensive broadband contracts they simply don't want. Now, a petition has now amassed more than 100,000 signatures, and joining me now is the director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed, who started this petition. Dennis, always a delight to have you on the show. It sincerely is, and it's not fair to get pensioners who just want to switch on their TV, and many of them do, to watch GB News. Thank you to all of them who are tuning in now on Freeview, to be expected to update. They don't want it. They don't want to go there. Why force them?
Well, absolutely. And it's not just the vulnerable and older people that are going to suffer here, Martin. It's all low-income people who can't afford to have the expensive broadband contract that will be needed if terrestrial TV is switched off. And everybody has to get broadband in order to see their favourite programmes, of course, including GB News. So yes, it is extremely important. Millions of people are sitting at home who may have internet TV at the moment, but they also have an aerial on the roof or in the loft, which, if they couldn't afford that broadband contract, they could always fall back on and get Freeview TV. Now, the government's going to take a decision in the next few months, a very important decision, about whether to switch off those terrestrial signals. And that has major implications for the economy too, because emergency services rely on the same signal system. Radio relies on the same system.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. The week began with the Prime Minister marred in scandal and on the brink. But is Sir Keir Starmer secure in his position for now? Joining me shortly to discuss this are the Labour MP Graham Downey. I'll be asking him whether he agrees with the Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar that the Labour Party needs new leadership. Earlier this morning I spoke with Dame Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary. I asked her whether the Prime Minister is plotting to betray Brexit, and does she agree with Keir Starmer that Reform UK is soft on Russia? Zia Youssef, Reform UK's head of policy, will also join me. Does he agree with the co-owner of Manchester United, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, that the country has been colonised by migrants? Top economist Ian King will be here to give his verdict on the week's growth figures. A former senior policymaker at the Bank of England says the UK is on course for its most dismal decade of growth in 100 years. Does Ian King agree? And finally, as Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham defy Starmer with calls for more support for pubs, will the government be forced to do more for the sector, and how will it pay for it? I'll be putting that to Andy Burnham's former nighttime economy czar, Sacha Lord. We've got an absolutely packed 90 minutes of politics ahead, so do not even think of going anywhere. But before all that, with me now to review the Sunday morning front pages is Tim Montgomery, journalist, broadcaster, podcaster, once a Tory, now Reform. Welcome this morning.
Good
Great
morning.
To see you.
How are you feeling? What a week in politics it's been.
Our heads are still spinning. It seems a long time ago that Anna Sarwar called for the Prime Minister's resignation, doesn't it?
And it started this week. We almost lost the Prime Minister.
Yes.
And yet, looking at the Sunday papers, full of interesting things, but the drama of what we were almost into seems to have... We've moved on very quickly, haven't we?
He's been given a stay of execution, Tim. And we shall be discussing with our guests on today's show, including Graham Downey, who is supporting Starmer, why he's doing so. But before we do that, let's have a look at all of the reports about this proposed EU reset, largely in the Sunday Telegraph. This is about Starmer giving his speech to Munich, talking about realignment, particularly on energy, which I think might prove controversial. Let's double down on net zero, Tim.
It's all going so well, isn't it? Those pensioners struggling to pay their household bills, the highest cost electricity in the world, that's seen British manufacturers devastated. And we're going to do even more.
Well, once a Remainer, always a Remainer, but also this sense that we need to realign when it comes to the military, security, defence. There's a very good cartoon in the Sunday Telegraph which is depicting Wuthering Heights, but instead of Cathy and Heathcliff, it is Keir Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen. And it's called Withering Heights rather than Wuthering. I hope we can see that now on screen. What's your thoughts? Because he did say he wouldn't cross the red lines, which are re-entering the single market and the customs union.
Well, it'll just be yet another U-turn, another broken promise. Look, the key thing is we are at a very dangerous place in world history. And Keir Starmer needs to do the basic things before he takes on even more challenges. The British military is seriously underfunded. When Rachel Reeves had her recent budget, she had 3 priorities. Defence wasn't one of them. The commitments that we've made, or the government has made on defence, they haven't been funded. We're supposed to have a defence industry paper that talks about our ability to create ammunition for our services. We don't have any ammunition at the moment. The army don't have the basics. So rather than doing grand designs, proposing grand designs with our European partners, do the basics, Prime Minister. And it's this failure to do the very simple things that we know need to be done, I think, that has dogged his premiership.
Yes.
He's so distracted by publicity, by opinion polls, he isn't being the Prime Minister that we need.
How did you regard Marco Rubio's speech to Munich? Because it got great plaudits and people were saying, oh, this was better than even Trump and J.D. Vance addressing conferences in recent times.
Well, reports of the death of the Western Alliance, Camilla, I think have been exaggerated.
Yes.
There's so much hot-headedness in punditry. What I think America was doing, and they were doing all the time, was they were absolutely fed up with the fact that Europe kept saying, we will increase our defence spending, and we never did. And what Trump did was try to scare us into doing what we should have chosen to do anyway. And I think what you're seeing with the Rubio speech now is a little bit of a healing. He realises that tensions got too high, particularly over Greenland.
Yes.
And he was the good cop. Last year we had J.D. Vance being the bad cop.
Yes.
Rubio and Vance may be up against each other for the presidency in the next Republican primary. And I think I prefer Rubio. It was more thoughtful. It's like Aesop's Fable. You know Aesop's Fable? Trying to get the man to take his coat off. Sun is better than wind.
Yes, Vance is much more isolationist, isn't he? Let's just have a quick word on Alexei Navalny's death, because it is extraordinary that Porton Down appears to have discovered that the poison used to kill him, this is obviously the famous Russian dissident who passed away at the age of 47, was from a dart frog. It kind of beggars belief. This is the stuff of Hollywood films. And then some have argued, oh, well, was this intentional by Russia? Did they want to be this conspicuous? What's your view?
Well, my home is Salisbury, just nearby Porton Down. And lots of things I remember about the attack on Salisbury. But it was the cavalier nature they attacked.
Yes.
They weren't really hiding, they said they were gym instructors, I think, those 2 men, coming to admire the cathedral. They were insulting our intelligence.
Yes.
They want us to know that they can do this sort of thing.
Yes.
And I think they chose an exotic poison because they know that Porton Down, that we have the capability of discovering something like this. And they want to intimidate us. They want to intimidate people in Russia, that if you cross Putin, you could end up, in the same path. And so I heard a report today saying that it was a brilliant discovery by us and exposed the Kremlin. It was a brilliant discovery by us, but I don't think it exposed the Kremlin. I think it's what Kremlin wants everyone to know.
Kremlin likes the promotion of the fact that they can use these very, very unusual and, frankly, sadistic methods to kill their opponents.
And, a little bit more of a dose in Salisbury would have killed thousands of people. We came incredibly close to what could have been a trigger for a conflict between our 2 nations. So this cavalier behaviour by Russia isn't academic.
And what do you make of Starmer suggesting that reform a party of which you are now a member, is soft on Putin, soft on Russia?
Well, there's this other story in the papers today about them trying to smear the Sunday Times.
Well, we'll get onto that.
And again, he was close to Russia was going to be the allegation. This is their weapon of choice, Labour. They smear people in any way they can, but their favourite one at the moment is to connect people to Russia. The key thing is Nigel Farage supports Ukrainian membership of NATO. He backs all of the aid packages we've given Ukraine. He's not soft on Russia at all. This is political games by a party, Labour, in power, that will do or say anything to try and reverse their terrible opinion poll position.
Well, let's move on to that extraordinary Sunday Times front page story. This is involving two journalists that Declaration I do know personally, Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York. Harry used to work with me at the Telegraph. And this is Labour Together, which is a kind of think tank stroke fundraising group that does donate money to the Labour Party. And it appears to have carried out some black ops on these two prominent Sunday Times journalists in a bid to discredit them, Tim?
Can I have a little rant?
Go for it. Why not?
I'm not suggesting that Alistair Campbell is behind this particular awful incident.
No evidence of his fingerprints on it, let's be honest.
But he, almost as much as Peter Mandelson, he, 20 or so years ago with New Labour, began this general tactic of not engaging in intellectual argument, not disagreeing with your opponents on policy, but smearing people. You know, blocking journalists who didn't write good copy, threatening newspapers that didn't do what New Labour wanted. And still today, that's how he behaves in politics. I once asked him, we were on Any Questions, the Radio 4 programme together, and I said to him beforehand, is there any Conservative you admire? And bluntly said, no, not one of them.
No.
There's a tribal football...
To balance this up, you could argue that actually that strategy during the Blair years produced much, much, much better comms for the PM then than the comms for the PM now. When Tim Allen walked out this week, people said, does he have a head of comms? What's this guy been doing? So we can't... Campbell isn't here to defend himself. No. I take what you're saying. He did do this huge rant himself, didn't he, on his podcast, where he started talking about institutionalised aggression and how things were denigrating in society. And I thought, well, if the Conservatives were in the same problem that Starmer now finds himself in, I don't know if you'd be blaming institutional aggression, you'd be blaming the Tories. But anyway...
Decision, heal yourself.
How about the future of the Labour Party under a Ed Miliband, Zach Polanski and Ed Davey Lovin? Because they are plotting some kind of pact, apparently, according to the Mail on Sunday, Tim.
Well, are you a betting person?
Not really.
I'm not, but I recently passed a bookie, which I will not mention.
Right.
And I put £5 on Ed Miliband becoming the next Prime Minister. But not because I want it, but the odds were 50 to 1.
Right.
And I think one of the lessons of this past week is all of the main challenges to Keir Starmer somehow diminished.
Yes.
The tax problems about Andrea haven't gone away.
Yes.
Wes Streeting almost went for it, but didn't quite.
And he's linked to Peter Mandelson.
And he's linked to Peter Mandelson. The one person that sort of is top of the poll of Labour members,
yes,
Ed Miliband, he's doing what the left wants.
Yes.
And my worry, Camilla, is that Labour will probably soon conclude that they can't win the next election, but they want to keep a contention. They want to keep their key seats. And I don't really think there's many people better placed to do that than Ed Miliband.
Goodness
he can sort of reinforce that core left-wing vote.
I mean, somebody
and
has
save
said
the Labour Party from complete devastation.
Somebody has said in the papers, comparatively, he's a clean skin. The only thing he ever did wrong was eat a bacon sandwich and indeed carve his pledges into a massive piece of stone that is currently languishing somewhere or may have been destroyed. Watch that space then. Yeah. How about John Healey?
If he does become Prime Minister, I'll share my winnings with you so we can at least drown our sorrows.
A quick word on John Healey, the Defence Secretary, very quickly. He's meant to be on manoeuvres.
Yeah, but I think this is sort of like a desperate... I think Keir Starmer might survive longer than we think because, in a way, what Labour do not need is a contest which shows how divided they are. A contest for Prime Minister in front of the British people where Rayner and Streeting fight out, and we will discover actually how divided the Labour Party is. What Starmer sort of... It may not be deliberate, but him not choosing a path for Labour reminds me of Harold Wilson.
Yes.
Not choosing a path means that half of the party are never so unhappy that they oust him. And I think we may have to put up with this sort of model for a long time. And perhaps John Healey, in a way, would continue that. His sort of carry-on sort of
so being all things to all
party.
men and women means that you're nothing to anyone, but therefore you're not alienating anyone either.
But there may be a reason for it.
We haven't had time to get on to Prince Andrew. Very quick yes-no question. Should he face a police probe over his actions as trade envoy? Now we know what we know from the Epstein files, yes or no?
I think so, yes.
And should he face a parliamentary probe because of what we now know about his behaviour when he was trade envoy? It's a governmental position, that.
Let the police make their verdict first, and then maybe a parliamentary inquiry if that doesn't happen.
Tim Montgomery, always enjoy your ranting on a Sunday morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much indeed. We may have to include a right of reply to Alistair Campbell in just a moment. Thank you, Tim. After the break, the Scottish Labour MP for Dunfermline and Dollar, Graham Downey, will join me. That's next. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading to Europe this half term, well, it's a mixed bag out there. Outbreaks of rain and some heavy showers and thunderstorms. Best of the sunshine, though, really confined to the Canary Islands and towards the south of Spain. Otherwise, outbreaks of rain across Portugal and northern Spain. Across the Mediterranean, that's where we're going to see areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing their way through. Otherwise, best of the sunshine really across the Canary Islands, highs of 25.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Graham Downey, the Labour MP for Dunfermline and Dollar. Lovely to see you this morning, Mr Downey. I think you are a Camilla Tominey show virgin, if I can call you that, so it's good to speak to you. And it's good to speak to a Scottish Labour MP. I'm going to get on to Anas Sarwar's intervention in just a moment. Tim Montgomery and I were just discussing the story on the front of the Sunday Times about Labour Together having paid £36,000 to a US public affairs firm to try and smear two Sunday Times journalists who you're no doubt familiar with, Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York. Shouldn't Labour Together now be told that they should have no involvement at all with the Labour Party and government if this story is true?
Honestly, I think we've seen statements like this. Labour Together have responded, I think, very effectively to these allegations that have come around over the last few months. And I think, to be honest, I think we should just leave that to carry on. I think we've seen that being done very effectively. I think the political parties will raise money. They will, of course, go about and campaign as they should. I think we've seen previous newspaper articles fairly well debunked as being frankly a load of nonsense over the last few months. So I think we'll leave that one to carry on. Labour Together, I'm sure, will respond again in the way they choose.
But I only make the point because this week at the Munich conference, Keir Starmer has been accusing Reform of being soft on Russia. And this is quite Kremlin-esque, isn't it, to dig into the backgrounds of UK journalists?
No, I mean,
that's quite aren't you disturbed by this, Mr Downey?
That's absolute nonsense, Camilla. I think what is definitely pro-Russia is when you've got a Reform Party whose former leader in Wales was actually directly funded by President Putin's Kremlin. I think that's what you call a pro-Russia political party, and that's what we've seen from Reform over a number of years now, with very dodgy funding coming from different places, and that's where we should be looking at as well. The government's is already looking at how we fund political parties and elections. There's legislation on that being considered in the House of Commons just now as well. But I'm very glad you brought up the Prime Minister's speech in Munich. That was, I think, a fantastic speech. As someone who's got an interest in defence as well, in particular in high north security, as a Scottish MP, I think we're seeing this government take that security threat from Russia seriously. The UK is a frontline nation. I think that's what we're seeing, how we combat that threat from Russia properly and effectively. OK, we'll get on to the speech in Munich in just a minute, but just if we continue the Russia theme when it comes to the postponement and indeed cancelling of elections over there, we've now got the head of the Electoral Commission criticising the Labour government for postponing these elections. Why would the government know better than the Electoral Commission's own head? This is the watchdog for elections in this country. We've now got 4.5 million people denied their democratic right in May. I think, again, Camilla, as a Scottish MP, that's not something I've been directly affected by. We're carrying on. As you would imagine, we've got elections in May where we'll try and make Anas Sarwar the First Minister of Scotland after 20 years of the SNP failing on public services like health, education and elsewhere. Again, this is something that I think we've seen the government have very strong and robust reasons why the local authorities are choosing to postpone those elections. In the meantime, of course, democracy is an absolutely vital thing to continue with. Those elections will be held down the line at more appropriate times. But the requests for those elections to be postponed have come from the councils themselves. And I think that's the thing to remember as well. My focus is on what I'll be doing later on this morning, which is knocking doors in Dunfermline and Dollar and campaigning for our fantastic Scottish Labour candidates for the elections in May. Wouldn't there be something ludicrous about installing Anas Sarwar as First Minister for Scotland if he thinks that the Prime Minister isn't up to the job? No, absolutely not, Camilla. I think that's a fairly ridiculous perspective to have. Anas Sarwar has been very clear in his views, and that's his right as an individual, as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. He's asked questions, he's got his views, he's entitled to hold them. What the election in Scotland is about whether or not we want a third decade of the SNP in power, ruining Scotland's health, education, skills, and other systems. Meanwhile, we've got a threat from Russia that you mentioned before that the SNP is not taking seriously by abandoning engagement with defence companies. That's what the choice is that Scottish people have in May, and that's what we'll be campaigning for strongly. Sorry, Mr Downey, you think it's ridiculous of me to suggest that there may be a contradiction at the heart of Anas Sarwar aiming to be the First Minister of Scotland when he has actually called for his own Prime Minister and his own party to resign, saying the government's made too many mistakes? You don't think there's a conflict there? There's a conflict, isn't there, Mr Downey? He is campaigning to be the First Minister of Scotland. That is exactly what he's campaigning for.
But he doesn't think the Prime Minister should be in place. This is the Labour leader and Prime Minister, and Anna Sarwar doesn't think he should be there, and you don't think that's a contradiction?
Absolutely not. He's given his views on the Prime Minister as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. He's absolutely entitled to have those views. The Prime Minister has made clear he's spoken to Anas a number of times over the last week. The Prime Minister's mission and Anas Sarwar's mission are both the same, which is to replace John Swinney as the First Minister of Scotland at the elections in May, and that's what they will carry on working together to do.
So Anas Sarwar wants to carry on in his role, even though he's openly called for the Prime Minister to resign. By the way, his press conference proved to be a completely damp squib. It's hard to disagree with him, though, isn't it, Mr Downey, when he says that the government has made, quotes, too many mistakes. We're now up to U-turn number 14, I believe.
I mean, the Prime Minister has the full support of the Cabinet. He has the full support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. I fully support the Prime Minister. And as well,
he doesn't have Anas Sarwar's support, though, does he?
The Prime Minister has said that he does acknowledge that the government has made mistakes and he's taken responsibility for those. But equally, this government has done an incredible amount of good things for people in Scotland. We've had increase in the minimum wage. We've lifted 80,000 children out of poverty. We've had record settlements from the UK government to the Scottish government that the SNP have squandered once again.
But don't you think that Anas Sarwar calling out the Prime Minister's mistakes undermines his position in Scotland? Why would Labour voters in Scotland have confidence in a potential First Minister that doesn't have confidence in his own Prime Minister? I'm sort of having to explain this. I think people watching and listening won't believe how you're reasoning this.
They're choosing a First Minister who is, as he's demonstrated, is his own man with his own views and will put the people of Scotland first. That's what Anas will do as First Minister of Scotland, which is in direct contradiction to what we've seen the SNP do for the last 20 years.
Do you think Starmer will still be Prime Minister in a year's time?
Absolutely.
OK, even though he's got the lowest satisfaction rate of any PM in modern history, and 52% of Brits said that they wanted him to resign earlier this week, according to a poll by Politico. He just hangs on despite being unpopular, does he?
I think the Prime Minister is not hanging on. The Prime Minister is delivering on the priorities of the British people. We're focusing on tackling the cost of living. We're focusing on making sure this nation is secure in a way that our armed forces were hollowed out by the previous government. This government is going about correcting that. As the Prime Minister has said, of course, this government has made mistakes. He's taken responsibility for those. But we have nonetheless done an incredible amount of things for the people across this United Kingdom. We've got to make sure we carry on doing that in these very difficult and troubled global times as well. But the Prime Minister has the support of the Cabinet. He's got the support of the PLP. He's certainly got my support to carry on that fantastic work that he's doing.
Was he wrong to put the whole House on growth when the growth rate this week was revealed to be 0.1%? Very briefly, Mr Downey.
I think we've seen this economy much more stable again than we saw over the last 14 years of Tory chaos, and I think that's the reality. We're seeing lower mortgage rates, we've seen interest rate cuts, we've seen one of the highest growth rates in the G7, we've seen investment being attracted to the UK, we've seen all of these things coming together. The economy is much more stable than it has been with this Prime Minister and with this Chancellor. That is the foundation for the future growth of this country, that stability, and that's what we need, and that's what this UK government is delivering.
Why do Labour keep on saying it's the best growth rate in the G7? It isn't, is it? We've got Germany and France with a higher growth rate than 0.1%.
I think we've seen that over the last period of this UK Labour government being in power. That's been the facts that we've seen. And it's not just about that. We've seen lower interest rates. That's led to lower mortgage rates. It's allowed this government to invest much more than previous governments have in capital projects that are vital for regenerating this economy. In my own constituency, we've seen £340 million of investment in the local dockyard as well. All of that will deliver jobs and economic growth for the future.
All right, Graham, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning from Scotland. Good to speak to you. Lots more still to come. I'm going to be speaking to the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel, Reform UK's Head of Policy, Zia Youssef, the economist Ian King and Andy Burnham's former nighttime czar, Sasha Lord. Don't go anywhere.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to see how you could win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, we could be sorting out your summer with an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000, courtesy of Riviera Travel. You'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I take it as a huge compliment that people remember it. I mean, let's be honest. How many times do people actually remember something you have done on television? And people remember that. But I take it as a huge compliment because, let's face it, Morecambe and Wise were loved. They are probably two of the greatest comics that we have ever produced in this country. And their legacy is that even, I think Eric died in 1984 when I was working in America. And so we're talking about, over 40 years ago. There are at least 2 generations of young people who now watch them on television, who laugh because they think they are funny. You know, they left us that legacy of what it is like to be a good comic. And I had the pleasure of working with them on that. How many people can say, well, you know, people will remember a particular thing you did in your career as a television broadcaster? And the fact that people did love them, I take as, you know, when people say to me, what was it like to work with Eric and Ern? They want to know, because I'm that vicarious link with them still, because there aren't too many people around still that can say they did work with them. So I mean, yes, of course I've got, you know, in 60 years of working in television, there are lots of other things that I've done, but I'm always, and that people remember me for reading the news. They remember us for all sorts of things, and it's a compliment always.
And you reading the news, that all comes together, starts in the 1970s, which to me was the greatest time in broadcasting. I think it started to dip off slightly after that. The 70s, I think, they were
your heyday.
I just think everything, and I think it had a lot to do with what was attainable to us as viewers, which was very little. We lived in a world that was divorced from the world of TV, and it was magical.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning and welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Lots more still to come today. We're going to hear my interview with Dame Priti Patel in just a moment. Also going to be speaking in the studio to Zia Youssef, the Head of Policy for Reform UK. Will he give us any inkling into Nigel Farage's shadow cabinet, which is set to be announced on Tuesday? Also going to be speaking to somebody very close to Andy Burnham, Sacha Lord, and I'm going to be speaking to the economist Ian King. What does he make of that 0.1% growth rate? So all of that still to come, but earlier I spoke with Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary at the Munich Security Conference. Dame Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, joins me now from the Security Conference in Munich. It's a little chilly, Dame Priti. Thank you very much indeed for bearing with the cold to speak to GB News this morning. Thank you. There's been quite a theme around Brexit and perhaps the reversal of Brexit with what Keir Starmer has been saying at the conference. What do you make of his quest to realign with the European Union on issues such as energy, security, the military?
Well, Camilla, you'll know my views. I completely disagree with his attempt to reverse Brexit. He doesn't have the mandate to do it. And of course, we've been watching him over the last 12 months on our fisheries, giving them away with that 12-year deal that he has agreed with the EU. And I would argue that this is not the right time to be doing this, of course. His approach is completely wrong. He's not transparent about this. And I have to say, it is desperate politics, basically, politically to appease his backbenchers and his political party. And quite frankly, there are so many major domestic issues that he should be focused on. And it's yet another distraction strategy by Keir Starmer and his failing prime ministership while he has lost authority in his party.
Although doesn't he have the support of Donald Trump's right-hand man on such issues, Marco Rubio, who's also said to the conference that he too supports the idea of aligning with the EU, maintaining that relationship between the US and the European Union? Some could argue that Starmer's only leaning into that.
Well, actually, I think the two are totally different. I think what Secretary Rubio has been referring to is absolutely in terms of the strategic partnership and alliance, the historic alliance that has existed between the United States and Europe for decades. And his speech was well considered and well thought out in the way in which he delivered it. And he spoke about that historic relationship. We know very, very well that Britain stands strong outside of the EU. It was the United Kingdom that led the response to Russia's illegal invasion in Ukraine. And on that basis alone, this is not about, greater alignment with the EU on issues such as climate and all those political areas that Keir Starmer is focusing on. The reality is right now, what we've heard from the Americans at the security conference is that we all need to put hard cash back into our defence and security. We have to address the world that we live in right now, not look backwards, but look forwards. And we have to confront the axis of authoritarianism and those states that are working to undermine our democratic values and freedoms.
Keir Starmer stated in the Labour manifesto that there were red lines he wouldn't cross. He didn't want to re-enter the single market or the customs union. Do you believe him?
No, of course, I do not believe him at all. I think he's completely untrustworthy on these issues. He says one thing and does another. And of course, this is a prime minister that I think is now up to U-turn number 15 or 16. The British public can see that we've got a weak and feeble prime minister. He says one thing, then he's sort of like bullied and forced into different positions by his own backbenchers. He's not in control of his party, his government, and the country can see we have a weak prime minister. And the reality is when it comes to all matters on the EU, he's desperate to rejoin the EU club, and that is his persona. And he was once shadow Brexit secretary, and he was campaigning for another referendum. So he's not put our national interests first at all. And this is a political agenda that he is trying to pursue, and I can tell you it's one that's going to be detrimental to our country and our economy.
There could be some who criticise the Tories for not maximising our post-Brexit potential enough, and that has then opened the door to this kind of reversal. If the Tories had done better at maximising Brexit opportunities, you wouldn't have people in this country suffering with what's known as regrets.
Well, I disagree with that, Camilla, because, you've also got a government that is lauding up its ability to do trade arrangements, free trade agreements around the world. And that is very much because of Brexit. So whether or not it's with America, whether or not it's with India, the fact that we can actually cooperate in different ways is exactly what Brexit is about. Yes, it takes time, but do not forget we have one of the biggest trade partnerships now with our friends, in Asia, Pacific countries, and a region that really matters to our country. So that is absolutely Brexit working. Outside of our membership of the EU, we've been able to do much more in terms of defence and security when it comes to obviously supporting Ukraine. And just a final point, here at the Munich Security Conference, there's been a lot of frustration aired about the fact that we're all held back by still working within certain institutions that are not necessarily functioning. We heard Senator Rubio speak about the United Nations needing reform. Well, as you absolutely will remember, I was a Secretary of State, the first Secretary of State to call for reform of some of these institutions and organisations, cutting back their money and putting in performance criteria. That's the world that we live in. And Britain has the agility now outside of Europe to get on and do the things that matter to our country, that matter to the British people, to British taxpayers, and actually stand tall in the world. And that's exactly what we should be doing much more of.
We've had this extraordinary revelation from Porton Down that Alexei Navalny may have been poisoned with toxin from a frog. Meanwhile, we've got Starmer accusing Reform of being too close to Russia, or at least soft on Russia. Do you agree with his analysis?
Well, I think, first of all, Reform will have to account for their own conduct and behaviour, and the fact that it is a fact that one of their members and leaders of their party in Wales has taken money from Russia. That's an absolute outrage and disgrace. They'll face the consequences of their actions. Now, of course, when it comes to Russia, Russia is a threat to our country and has been for well over a decade now. And it was my colleagues in government, our former Home Secretaries and Foreign Secretaries, that took very firm action against Russia. We've had the whole issue of state-sponsored terror and poisoning in our own country. But what I would say is that what we've learnt in the last 24 hours around the poisoning, the state-sponsored assassination of Alexei Navalny, is absolutely horrific. And of course, Russia has a long and dark history of state-sponsored assassinations that dates back to the Cold War. And it ranged from Novichok to ricin to cyanide, and now this latest poison that the Russians create in their own laboratories. So this demonstrates that Russia is a threat to all of us. They're part of the evil axis of authoritarianism. We cannot ignore the threat that Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, the whole axis poses to our own country, to our own way of life, to our freedoms and democracy. And Camilla, for the first time, certainly since the end of the Cold War, we're fighting for those values and freedoms. And we absolutely need to stand strong in the world, but we've got to put our money where our mouth is. We've got to be resourcing our defence, our intelligence, our security apparatus to absolutely confront these challenges that we are now facing. This is a very, very serious time. And at this conference, we've heard the Americans speak about that. We've heard many of our other friends and allies speak about this too. And we can't just sort of give issues, speak about words and rhetoric anymore about what we'd like to do. We have to stand up and actually deal with these issues head on.
Can we bring it back to domestic matters for a moment, Dame Pretty, and just talk about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments about the UK being colonised by migrants? Do you agree with that rhetoric?
Well, look, first and foremost, Jim Ratcliffe has to account for his own comments. But I do just want to say, when it comes to the issue of migration, we've discussed this many times. We have to be strong and we have to be firm in terms of the way the government of the day, and including not just the government, but the policies that we put forward, how we deal with these issues. The public have major concerns. We have major concerns. And as you know, with my party, we're fundamentally clear in terms of what we would do now. We have to change our laws. We have to leave the ECHR. We have to have policies that actually deal with these issues, people's fears, concerns, anxieties, and effectively change our laws. And that's the policy position that my party is putting forward. You know my views when it comes to illegal migration. We have to have stronger deterrence. We have to remove illegal migrants. We cannot allow them to continue in the merry-go-rounds of trying to go to the courts and claim asylum in this country. We have had all the warnings for too long, and we need to act. And that is why my party is putting the policies forward that we are on this issue.
But you do appreciate that many won't trust you on those pledges, not least because the Tories, and when you were Home Secretary, allowed in record numbers of migrants, 745,000 in 2022 when you were in post. So you can appreciate that people regard your comments on this with a degree of cynicism.
Well, they can, Camilla, but what I'd say now is that even when I was Home Secretary, when it came to illegal migration, we had those policies on tough deterrence. We've got a government now. This is about the current government failing to deal with these issues and address these issues. My party is clear. We're going to change our laws, and that isn't just about words and rhetoric. We have done the work when it comes to the policy delivery to leave the ECHR. Name another political party that has made the commitment, demonstrated the work, shown the frameworks that would bring the policy deliveries and operationalise those policies. And we are committed to bringing that forward. It'll be part of our manifesto, and we know how we will deliver that. That's the fundamental difference between us and every other political party.
Dame Pretty, one final very quick question, because we are struggling slightly with the reception between us and Munich. You were once a trade secretary. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was a trade envoy before you were in that department, I must stress that. But there are now growing questions about his conduct in office. Do you think there should be a parliamentary inquiry into how he behaved as trade envoy during 2001 and 2011?
Well, Camilla, let me say a few things. First of all, I was not in the Trade Department, but this is such a serious scandal, and it's engulfing the whole of government. And quite frankly, in answer to your question, the answer is yes. Everyone that's been involved, should be subject to the right kind of inquiries, police investigations. And what has taken place and happened is absolutely abhorrent. And it's right that everyone is scrutinised in terms of their roles, what has happened, information, papers that may have been shared and disclosed. I think the country will feel absolutely sick with what we are now discovering with these disclosures, and full transparency and the rule of law should be applied to absolutely everyone that was involved in all of this.
Dame Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning from Munich.
Thank you, Camilla.
That was Dame Priti Patel speaking to me earlier. GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is now in Munich and joins us. Catherine.
Yes, good morning, Camilla, from Munich. This is a security conference. It's been going on for decades, but it's really in the last couple of years that it has become so important as it is. I was talking to Dame Priti Patel just before that interview that she did with you, and she was talking about she's had literally dozens of meetings here because the world has changed. It is clearly more dangerous than it was. The motive here of the Munich Security Conference is an elephant with bits missing and the words under destruction. We're told that we're in the era of wrecking ball politics. Now, I think some of the cracks, frankly, have been papered over here. There is huge relief in Munich that Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, made a speech with a much more conciliatory tone towards Europe, though a lot of it a similar message to what J.D. Vance said here last year when he really ruffled a lot of feathers. Marco Rubio saying, look, Europe is important to the United States, even describing the United States as Europe's child, but stressing the need for Europe to be strong, to spend money on its own security. And that is a message that clearly has finally been heard in Europe. Donald Trump has been saying for many, many years, pay up. Europe is finally listening. Okay, it's taken, as Ursula von der Leyen said, a bit of shock therapy, including the fact that Donald Trump is now saying he wants to have Greenland, and there's been discussions going on about that here. But, you know, Dame Priti Patel saying we've got to put our money where our mouth is. The Prime Minister here yesterday talking very tough in terms of we've got to be able to fight for our future and defend ourselves. We're going to have to level with the public about the choices that will have to be made. But those pledges of defence spending, at the moment, that 5% that we've said we'll get to by 2035, it's a very, very long way off. At the moment, we've only pledged, I think, to get to 2.5% by 2027, and then 3% by the end of the next Parliament. So for all the rhetoric here, I'm not quite sure that the reality will match up to it. But clearly, the Prime Minister sending a very clear message that he wants to get much closer to Europe. That's something that he's already said. But we heard it again yesterday. It went down very well in the hall when he said the Brexit years are behind us. I'm not quite so sure that it's going to go down so well with many of our GB News viewers.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed, or indeed the country, but let's see. Thank you, and I know you're going to be updating us throughout the course of the day from Munich. Coming up next, Zia Youssef, Reform UK's Head of Policy, will join me in the studio. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Zia Youssef, Reform UK's Head of Policy, joins me now in the studio. Lovely to see you this morning. Tell us about this Reform Cabinet that is being unveiled on Tuesday. We have reported on The Telegraph that Chancellor under a future Nigel Farage government would be Robert Jenrick. Nazim Zahawi would run the Foreign Office. Richard Tice would have Business and Energy, and you would run the Home Office.
Well, the framing of your question, Camilla, suggests that you've already taken as read that Reform win the next general election.
Well,
so, firstly, thank you for the subliminal vote of confidence there. So that's the first point to make.
Should it happen?
You'll have to tune in to find out what Nigel announces. I will say this, though. The fact that you are asking that question is evidence of the strength of the team that Nigel has around him. I think there are any number of exceptional people who Nigel's going to be able to have in his cabinet. We're still, obviously, sadly, some way off a general election. Nigel announced this week that he would be beginning the process of announcing a shadow cabinet team. And, you know, I think that actually the team that he announces put up against the top 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, whatever the number is, against any other party will look very good indeed.
Well, I'm glad you're now answering these questions. I asked about who his future Chancellor might be when you unveiled your alternative budget, and I was told I was playing silly little games. But I will ask one follow-up question about this role of Chancellor. Should it go to Robert Jenrick, Shadow Chancellor, if Nigel Farage becomes the next Prime Minister? I thought that's a job you wanted.
Well, look, again, there are several people I think Nigel could put in the role of Shadow Chancellor that I think would be both excellent in that role and excellent as Chancellors. And there are no shortage of huge roles, by the way, that will still not have been announced this week. So, again, I think I understand why you're asking. I appreciate there's obviously keen interest in it. You won't have to wait long. We're not far off from those announcements. Again, I want to underscore the point, though, that Nigel has in his team already some exceptional people who are not just, I think, good at communicating a message, but I actually think more importantly than that, Camilla, who are going to be able to execute against a vision where we're united as a political party. And I think whether it's somebody who's joined us from the Conservative Party, having had some ministerial experience, or somebody who's come into politics from business or in other places, that is a model. That latter one in particular, Camilla, will be a model for, I would say, the majority of Nigel's further announcements. I still, the cabinet that Nigel Farage has as Prime Minister, if we are the winners of the next general election, the majority of those people will indeed be people, fresh faces from outside of politics.
I mean, some of them are clearly going to be former Tories. Are you all getting on OK? I mean, you in the past and Robert Jenrick had exchanged some interesting language, clueless, a clown. Things getting along
Which
better now.
Which direction was that? Was that me calling him that?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
Yeah.
Somebody called someone clueless and somebody retorted by saying they were a clown. Look, everything going all right? A nest of singing birds,
I'm getting on great with Robert. I speak to him almost every day. Robert's a thoughtful, serious person. I think he'll be a credit to the party and will do a great job if in whatever role Nigel gives him if we're in government. And, the notion that we have got time to be spending bickering about positions, again, I would say that whole analysis, I'd argue, is very Tory-coded. We're focused on, number one, these May elections that are coming up, which are going to be absolutely historic. I thought last year's May elections were the most historic set of local elections in this country's history. I think these ones have the chance to be just as historic. So we're focused on that. We're focused on continued policy formulation ahead of a potential general election, which, look, it might not be until 2029, but given the shambles that is currently in place, I mean, look, Keir Starmer is no longer really running the country, is he? He's only nominally running the country. So the chances of an early general election are high. That's why Nigel has said he has put us on a war footing.
He says you're half ready to fight a general election.
We are in the process of, we've opened up parliamentary candidates. We've been inundated with exceptional candidates. I mean, I was going through, just organically, by the way, these aren't even people we've headhunted, just exceptional people.
Can you give me any numbers as to, because I know the email went out last week, didn't it? How many people have come forward?
Suffice to say, we have more than enough to cover the number of seats. But look, that number's going to continue to keep going up. We're also going to be headhunting and going out and talking to people who might not otherwise be predisposed to apply. But look, we've had lots of people from our base and our grassroots apply who have done really interesting and useful things in the real world. And I think that's so much of the diagnosis. I did a video from the NEC making this point that I actually think, independently of what politicians will come and say on this show or any other show, obviously that's important. But I think so much of the diagnosis, Camilla, of what has gone wrong in this country is that it's only been career politicians, all right, making those decisions. And then also those career politicians are swapped in and out of these positions with such frequency, you couldn't possibly get anything useful done. You would never see that in the private sector in any serious organisation. So we're looking for people who've done useful, ideally exceptional things in the real world, whether that's in health, whether that's in education, whether that's the military, or whether that's in business, for example.
Are you worried about Rupert Lowe setting up this rival group, Restore UK? It's just happened. Quite a lot of the audience may be following what Mr Lowe is doing now. He's out of reform.
Well, look, it's a democracy. People are entitled to start parties, and we'll see what level of support will be achieved. I mean, look, the first past the post system, someone who was chairman of this party for a considerable period of time, it is really, really difficult. And I think people underestimate how hard it is. I mean, Nigel himself, if you remember, tried a number of times to just become an MP, let alone get us into this position. So, look, all we'll do is continue to make our argument.
It's worrying for the right to be this divided. You've got Rupert Lowe doing his thing, Reform doing your thing, the Conservatives doing their thing. We talked earlier about the prospect of some kind of Lib Green coalition. If that beat Reform on its own, you'd have to start doing deals with the right, wouldn't you?
Well, that's a big if, right? And in that hypothetical scenario, you'd have to do it with the patriotic thing. But ultimately, Reform
so you
is...
would have
Reform,
to do the patriotic.
Well, no, but hold on. Reform is led north of 200 opinion polls in a row. The average of our lead in the polls consistently is 9 to 10 points. We are on course for a general election.
If the alternative was the coalition that I've just described, you just said something about patriotic duty. Are you saying that if it came to it, that the right would have to unite to see off a progressive alliance?
Well, I think as soon as you're in the territory of that conversation, look, frankly, this is why I came into politics, I'd be extremely concerned about the way the country is going to end up, because there's nothing, frankly, right about the Tory party in terms of how they've governed. And by the way, as a result of the recent defections to reform, I would argue the Wets are now going to continue to dominate the Conservative Party.
Yeah,
so all we're talking about
there... difficult to do a deal with. I'm merely making the point, because I'm going to hammer in on this.
Yeah.
You're not ruling out a future coalition if it prevents a progressive alliance taking control of this country. The Greens, the Libs and Labour, are you and Nigel Farage and others going to stand by and let that happen because you don't think you can do deals with the Tories or indeed Rupert Lowe if the time came?
I think the focus for us is to ensure that we win an outright majority at the general election. And again, this isn't just something I'm saying, Camilla. It's why I came into politics. My position on this has been consistent. I voted Tory historically. I was a member of the Conservative Party, right? I was excited when Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister initially and got Brexit done. But then what they ended up doing as a result of Boris, as a result of Priti Patel, who was just on before me, was to govern in a manner that I would argue is actually to the left even of Keir Starmer in terms of border policy.
It sounds to me like you're not ruling out a future pact. But let's move on for a minute, because I am intrigued if you are the person who might run the Home Office under a future Nigel Farage government. What did you make of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments about parts of Britain being colonised?
I thought it was really interesting that Jim Ratcliffe says that migrants have effectively colonised in the UK. And the level of anger and uproar about his use of language relative to the actual issue and concern that he was pointing out, which, by the way, millions and millions of people in this country share that concern.
So you think that parts of Britain have been colonised?
Well, let's look at the dictionary definition of colonise, which is to send people to a piece of land in order to sort of take it over or to govern. And if you look at, for example, the fact that more people have turned up on our beaches illegally since 2018 than landed on the beaches of D-Day, the majority, indeed vast majority, of those people who have arrived are A, men, military-age men, and B, generally from countries that, frankly, despise this country, generally. That's a huge concern. In fact, it's a larger number than the British Army has available to it.
But he's speaking about more than that, isn't he? I think he's referring to perhaps parts of Birmingham, parts of Leicester. He may be referring to Tower Hamlets. Robert Jenrick, your colleague now, has made a point about going to Birmingham and seeing, quotes, no white faces, about some areas of the UK being no-go areas. Do you agree with this? Because what he's referring to is a Islamic colonisation of some parts of the UK. You're a Muslim man. Does that language accord with what?
Well, I'm not sure if you use that phrase, but I understand the question you're asking. So number one, we've got to look at the sheer numbers, right? This is an inevitable consequence, Camilla, of the Tories basically lying in 4 consecutive manifestos, saying they were going to cut net immigration down to the tens of thousands, meaning people in this country voted overwhelmingly for less immigration time and time again. They ended up bringing in 12 million people net over their gross over their 14 years, 6.5 million people net. Then you can also talk about the composition. The Boris wave, which we've talked about a lot. Millions and millions of people who've arrived, the vast majority from non-EU countries, and then the vast majority of those on non-work visas. Again, nobody voted for this. That's a fiscal disaster that needs to be averted, which is another reason, by the way, in terms of voting for a party that is going to abolish. We've already said we would abolish indefinite leave to remain, avert the Boris wave, deport every illegal immigrant in this country. There is only one party, Camilla, which is serious about doing it and has a serious chance of being the next government. I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get that. And if we fail at this, I don't know if we'll get another chance. And then to the point about certain areas in this country, the Green candidate, again, this isn't just my opinion. The Green candidate in Gorton and Denton has just put out a leaflet in Urdu.
Yes.
And we're seeing this, we've got these Gaza MPs.
Steam away from discussing the by-election purely because we then have to list every candidate. But I'm just being in general. Say even if you looked at Tower Hamlets and the situation there, OK, this is a council which is now full of, I suppose, some British, but a lot of non-British people, lots of non-British surnames. If that's what Jim Ratcliffe is referring to, I don't know. Parts of Birmingham, I've just expressed what Robert Jenrick said about parts of Birmingham. He also used the term no-go zones. Leicester, same could apply. What can reform actually do about that? Because if you agree that these areas have been colonised, can they be decolonised? And should they be?
So the first thing we need to do is stop the situation getting worse. right? At the moment, it is not only getting worse, it is getting worse at an accelerated manner. I mean, more illegal migrants have turned up on boats under Keir Starmer than any other prime minister, right? So we're now already in a situation that's deteriorating fast. We need to stop the boats from coming. Number two, yes, we need to embark upon mass deportations. That is no longer a controversial position. I mean,
of people that have been here for a long, long time.
If your status is illegal, we're clear about this.
What
you
if
should
your
expect to be
status is
deported.
legal, but you haven't integrated, you don't speak English, and you are colonising your own local area?
Well, that's where our indefinite leave to remain policy comes into play. So what we have said is our expectations, and Nigel's expectations as Prime Minister of migrants in this country on ILR, will be, number one, that you speak English to a good standard. Number two, because the current standard of English requirement, by the way, is a joke. It's nowhere near it, so it needs to be a higher standard. We've been clear about that. Number two, you cannot commit crime. And number three, you need to more than pay your way, right? You need to be a net positive contributor to the economy, and that manifests in the form of a materially higher contribution payment, minimum salary requirement. Yes, we'll have things like spousal routes and things like that. That will almost certainly result in a significant portion of people needing their state. They will be given a period of chance to leave the country.
You're happy to be at the helm of that, because it's not going to make you particularly
Camilla, we don't have a
popular.
choice. The Boris wave is going to cost hundreds of billions of pounds, and that's not even in the OBR's numbers. People watching this programme who pay their taxes, you cannot expect them to, having voted, by the way, for less immigration, for this immigration to have happened, which isn't, frankly, even the fault of the people who arrived, it's the fault of the politicians who allowed it to happen and betrayed the voters, to now expect this country to lurch into, I think, fiscal oblivion if these decisions are not made, I think is unacceptable. So, yes, there are going to be very difficult decisions that need to be made, and we've been crystal clear that we will make them.
Zia Youssef, thank you very much indeed for joining me. We'll look out for the announcement on Tuesday, I think it is, about the shadow cabinet. And talking of fiscal oblivion, let's discuss whether that is actually a prospect for the UK with the economist Ian King next. And I'm also going to be speaking to a close ally of Andy Burnham, Sacha Lord, not least about the hospitality and pubs industry and what can be done to save it. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After yesterday's sunshine, well, the rain has returned. It will clear the southeast later and then followed by sunny spells and scattered showers. Icy stretches in places first thing though across Scotland and northern England. Otherwise to the south of that, an unsettled picture here, especially compared to Saturday. Outbreaks of rain could turn a little bit wintry across East Anglia. Behind that, it is a case of showers merging to give longer spells of rain across the country, perhaps mixed in with some hail and thunder. Highs of up to 10 or 11 degrees in the best of the sunshine across the southwest. So as we go through Sunday evening then, it's a wet end to the day across eastern parts of Scotland. Still, some of this falling as snow over the highest mountains. To the west of that, it is a case of clear spells and showers. That theme continues across Northern Ireland, a lot of cloud around, but also a few showers pushing their way in, and again for much of England and Wales. And most of these will be falling as rain, especially more so across the northern parts of Wales compared to recent days. Otherwise, as we go through the night, most of the showers clear their way through, especially across the south and east. So largely dry here, but to the west, that's where we're just going to see rashes of showers pushing their way through as we start Monday morning. Otherwise, there is a fair amount of cloud around, but in between any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost to start Monday. Otherwise, as we go through Monday, it is a case of sunny spells, frequent blustery showers. Some of the showers in the north are still going to be falling wintry, especially over the hills, perhaps even merging to give longer spells of rain across Northern Ireland and more so into parts of Wales. Otherwise, there should be some sunshine in between and temperatures not doing too bad. We'll see highs of up to 9 or 10 degrees in the south. That's all from me. Bye-bye.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is the economist Ian King. Lovely to see you in the studio this morning. Sia Yousaf there warning that we are entering some kind of economic oblivion. Now, you can look at that 0% growth rate and say, maybe he's right. We've also had Andrew Sentence, former Bank of England policymaker, saying it's the most dismal decade for growth in 100 years. Ian?
I'm afraid that's true. I mean, that's really borne out. I mean, if you look at the long-term things that the economy has gone through. I mean, personally, I don't think the UK economy has really recovered from the global financial crisis. We were very, very heavily exposed to the financial services sector. It generated an awful lot of tax. It was a big part of driving productivity as well. And
a long time ago, though.
It is 2007-08. But if you look at the trend rate of growth and the trend rate of productivity improvement, neither of those things have really got back to the pre-2007 levels. And I think that's a key reason why we are where we are. Now, if you take the public finances, obviously it was a huge blow to public finances at the time. I mean, the coalition government, when it came in 2010, inherited a deficit to GDP ratio of 10%, which was something that no incoming government had faced ever, really. I mean, that was absolutely huge, not since the war. And then, of course, we just started to get over that. You know, the deficit had come back into where the market would be comfortable with, where the Treasury would have been comfortable with it. And then you get the blow of the pandemic.
Yes.
And again, the pandemic blew a lot of things off course. So the economy has not really recovered from those two big hits.
Although Labour put the whole house on growth. Growth was Rachel Reeves's message when she first became Chancellor. She's not succeeded in that. I appreciate what you're saying about historic, very, very significant factors. Global financial crisis, COVID, these are massive kind of once-in-a-lifetime events. However, the last two budgets have not helped.
No, I mean, that's beyond dispute. I mean, the tax-raising budget in 2024 really had an impact. Interestingly, not just in terms of growth, but in terms of employment. If you look at unemployment now, 5.1%. I mean, you compare that where we were in the 1980s, politicians of the 80s would have given their right arm for 5.1%. But in terms of where we've been over recent years, I mean, the UK economy has had a very, very good story to tell on employment. But it's really ratcheted up the cost of hiring people, particularly in areas like retail and hospitality. And then if you look at the latest GDP figures that we had last week, clearly the late timing of the budget didn't help. Yes. I was in this very studio on budget day.
Yes.
You had another £25 billion worth of tax increases, but it was all the speculation, all the kite flying that you had. There was something like...
There was like an 8-week run-up to the budget.
I think it was actually longer than that, Camilla. So you've got all that speculation about mansion taxes, pitch rolling for potential income tax increases, and you saw what that absolutely flattened consumer spending. It hammered the services sector in particular. And if you look at the December number, which we got out the other day, I mean, services had a pretty poor December. The only reason that the economy grew in the final quarter of last year really was down to an uptick in manufacturing. And you could say, well, there were weird factors at play there, chiefly the fact that Jaguar Land Rover, who'd been forced to close down production for a while after being hacked, suddenly got back into production. So that final quarter of last year was really down to the fact that manufacturing and production picked up. There was no growth in December from the services sector.
Also, what are we to make of the Labour defence that actually, even though it's 0.1, it's still the best growth in the Eurozone? That doesn't seem to be true anymore.
We're in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
I was going to say 0.3% for the Eurozone overall, France growing by 0.2, Germany seeing growth of 0.3. I did put this to the Labour MP earlier, sort of wanted to deny it, but the point is we can't say that anymore.
If you want to take a glass half full approach here,
yes,
you can say the economy as a whole grew by 1.3% last year. Now, that was below where the Bank of England expected it to be. It was below what a lot of forecasters expected, but it was actually the best growth that we'd had for 3 years.
Okay.
So
In post-pandemic recovery, but I take your point. Tax is still at historic high.
But in terms of where we want the economy to be, I mean, ultimately, you want to be paying, it's productivity growth that ultimately pays for people's salary rises. And we just really haven't had that.
What's America doing that we could do? Because their growth rate is obviously, by comparison, phenomenal.
Well, one thing that they've done, which we've progressively reined in, is it's very easy to hire and fire people in the US.
Yes.
And we're making it harder for, the new employment rights rules that Angela Rayner helped craft. That makes it much harder for employers to do that. So if you're an employer, you're going to be a lot more hesitant about taking someone on than perhaps you once would have done. That's one thing. Another is energy. Industrial energy, costs for industrial energy users in this country are something like 4 times what they are in the United States. And again, that's a real drag on growth, and particularly in manufacturing. But across the economy, it's a piece. And obviously, it eats into people's ability to spend. It eats into businesses' ability to invest. I mean, one of the key things in the GDP figures that came out on Friday, business investment contracted by 2.7% in the last quarter of last year. I mean, that's terrible.
How do you think the markets will react to a future Prime Minister in the vein of Angela Rayner?
Pretty badly. Simon French, good friend of mine, who's the chief economist at Panmure Liberum, he's worked in the Treasury, he's got a brain from here to the car park. He was actually asked by The Times last week, what sort of risk premium would the markets put on, say, Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband? And he said, potentially that's 50 basis points, half of 1% higher on UK borrowing costs if either of those two became Prime Minister. Whatever you think of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, in terms of the current Labour cabinet, in terms of who's on their backbenches, the sort of pool of talent that they have to draw on, probably Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are the most market-friendly people there. Yeah.
Ian King, what a thought to end on. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Lovely to speak to you. Coming up next, I'm going to be speaking to Sacha Lord, who did work with Andy Burnham. He was his nighttime czar, and he's going to tell us what the government should be doing to help pubs and the hospitality sector. Don't go anywhere.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're heading to Europe this half term, well, it's a mixed bag out there. Outbreaks of rain and some heavy showers and thunderstorms. Best of the sunshine, though, really confined to the Canary Islands and towards the south of Spain. Otherwise, outbreaks of rain across Portugal and northern Spain. Across the Mediterranean, that's where we're going to see areas of showers and thunderstorms pushing their way through. Otherwise, best of the sunshine really across the Canary Islands, highs of 25.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We were looking earlier at the coin that the Australian Mint have minted, a commemorative coin of the late Queen Elizabeth. Everybody is noting that even though it's selling apparently like hot cross buns for $100, it doesn't look like her at all. I think we've got the picture and we can show you. But
I can see
one of our viewers, lovely viewers, has texted in already and said she looks like Hyacinth Bouquet.
Yeah.
She does, doesn't she?
She does a little bit.
She doesn't look like the Queen.
I mean, I can see how it is the Queen, but it's because it's face on, and it's you don't get the sort of depth of it in a way. So she just looks rounder, flatter.
Yes, I'd say that.
Whereas
I'd say so.
It's not a coin that's going to be used as money. What do you call it? It's not
legal tender.
Legal tender.
Oh, is it not legal tender?
No, it's just a commemorative coin. So I suppose instead of doing it the traditional way of just a profile pic, they've gone for something a bit, more personality, a bit warmer.
They've given her a funny grin as well.
Very odd mouth.
Didn't coins used to like that used to be legal tender though?
They can be. It depends where you get them.
Right.
Depends. I mean, because sometimes they do ones sort of minted in Jersey and things that you get over here, which you can't spend. But some of them you can. I mean, if you get the commemorative coins over here from the Royal Mint, then you can technically spend them, but people aren't obliged to take them.
I've been to a branch of the Royal Mint.
Have you? Did you nick anything?
No, of course I didn't.
Oh, I would have done.
Well, Piers Bossinger is with us actually here in the studio as well, and he's just sort of said, actually, it looks a bit more like Les Dawson.
Yep.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Andy Burnham's former nighttime economy czar, Sacha Lord, joins me now. Mr. Lord, lovely to see you this morning. I mean, Manchester and Greater Manchester has done very well under your watch and indeed Andy Burnham's. £6 to £7 billion annually the nighttime economy has been valued at, supporting up to 50,000 jobs. Those stats, I hope, are up to date. So you've done very well with it. We'll get on to what more needs to be done for hospitality across the country. But in the first instance, I have to ask you, as you work very closely with him, would Andy Burnham be a better leader of the Labour Party and indeed the country than Keir Starmer right now?
Well, the simple answer is yes, he would. I think anyone would, to be honest, because he's the most hated PM of my lifetime. And, I watched your programme this morning, Camilla, and frankly, I felt sorry for the Labour MP, was his name Graham Downey?
Graham Downey, yes.
Yeah, he's been given lines. He has to sit there and say these lines. And, if he was linked up to a lie detector, I think it'd be spiking all over the show. There is no way on earth he believes Keir Starmer will be Prime Minister at the next general election. Not a chance.
I mean, to be fair, I do feel sorry for some of these Labour MPs. We would have wanted to have spoken to the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper. For some reason, she couldn't find time for GB News, despite our soaring ratings and all the rest of it. What can you say? It is difficult for him, but there is a contradiction at the heart of him supporting Anna Sarwar, who doesn't actually support the Prime Minister. That's a difficult situation for Keir Starmer to be in right now, with the May elections fast approaching.
It's an impossible situation. And, I worked all my life in Greater Manchester. And when I've been putting on my festivals and events, I've got to know a lot of the Labour councillors. And, I am so worried for them, Camilla, come the 7th of May, because they are hardworking people and through no fault of their own, they're going to lose their jobs come the 7th of May. They're going to be completely wiped out. And after that, I think that's when there's going to be a leadership bid. And it is totally unfair. And this is coming from the top down. A fish rots from the head, and Starmer just has to go.
But your man Burnham doesn't have a route to Parliament, does he? He's been blocked. And let's not talk about the by-election, please, because otherwise we have to get into complicated listing of candidates. But he's been blocked. There's now talk in the Mail on Sunday that Lucy Powell might stand aside in Liverpool. But he'll be blocked again, won't he, if Starmer's allies continue to dominate the decision-making on this?
Well, I think this just shows how weak and cowardice the PM is. That Sunday morning before the NEC actually met, the MPs and the ministers were all over the news saying, we're going to put our best team player forward. Well, every single poll showed that there was one person that would succeed, and that was Andy Burnham, and he got blocked. How did he find out he was getting blocked after 30 years' commitment to the Labour Party? He read it in The Guardian, Camilla. That is appalling. No one picked up the phone for him. How's he responded to that? He's out knocking on doors. So, that is the class of the man. And it just shows where the Labour Party is at the moment. And, they're cancelling elections. And I'm reading in the press that they're trying to dirty journalists by paying 26 grand to dig up. That's not what we want. People want our high streets to be supported. You know, where is the support from Rachel Reeves, who on more than one occasion during the election told me she was the Chancellor of Business and Growth? It's simply not the case. I thought she would come in and support the pubs, the small restaurants, the independent bars, and so our high streets are devastated.
OK, well, let's get on to pubs, Mr Lord. I'm going to just correct you on the Labour Together. Actually, it was 36 grand that was paid to apparently dish dirt on 2 Sunday Times journalists, but I digress. On pubs, we saw Andy Burnham and Angela Rayner in a pub this week together, calling for more measures to help the hospitality sector. What's the one thing the government should do? I know there are many, but what's the priority for the government, for the Chancellor and Rachel Reeves, to save this industry?
The one single mechanism that they can now control because of Brexit is our VAT rate.
Yes.
You know, we're at 20%. We're the highest VAT rate in the whole of Europe, where it averages between 8 and 9%. We are the 5th biggest industry in the whole of the UK, the 3rd largest employer. And we have a cost of living crisis at the moment. People can't afford to go into our pubs and our restaurants. So by helping them to reduce that VAT rate, we could lower our prices. You know, a pint at the moment on average is £6, Camilla. It is ridiculous. And I have friends every summer texting me, well, I'm in Tenerife, I've just paid €3 for a pint. How come I'm paying £6 in Manchester, £7 in London? And one of the answers to that is we are taxed 20 times more than a pint in Germany, our alcohol duty. You know, that is how much we are being taxed at the moment in the UK. It feels as an industry that we're just simply tax collectors for HMRC at the moment. That's how it feels. You know, places are busy, but no one's making any money at all.
And is it true, finally, Mr Lord, that out of every pint a publican sells, they only get to retain 14 pence of it, 1/4?
Actually, it's less than that. It's 13 pence now. Once you paid your alcohol duty, you pay your VAT, you pay your beer, utility bills, staffing, rent, 13p on a £6 pint. I mean, when you've got the Chancellor putting business rates up by 76% on pubs and 115% on hotels that cost tens of £1,000s extra, you have to sell hundreds of thousands of extra pints. And everybody watching, knowing this, knows that that's not possible. So we need the help, and we urgently need the help. And I thought that's what Labour were going to do. And they're not. They're spending time with the big corporates, and there needs to be spending time with the small independent businesses. They are the bloodline of our high street.
Sacha Lord, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. We await the spring statement, should it go ahead. There'd been some talk that it might not, and see if there are any extra measures in there for the hospitality industry. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up next on GB News is Sunday with Michael Portillo. Michael, lovely to see you. You're back. What's coming up?
I'm back, Camilla. I want to ask why our armed forces are so hollowed out when we spend vastly more on our defence than Israel does. What are the ethics of firing all your advisors and clinging on to office yourself? The history of war crimes and war crime trials from Nuremberg to the present day, and the painting of canals with very, very beautiful designs. Is it a dying art?
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Michael. We very much look forward to that at 11. Thank you to all of my guests for joining me today. As ever, I shall be back at the same time next week, 9:30. Do tune in. In the meantime, shall we hope for a more restful week? I doubt that's going to happen. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And as I say, Michael Portillo is up just after this weather. See you next week.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Hope you enjoyed the sunshine yesterday, but it is starting to turn a bit more wet with some blustery showers across the rest of the weekend, which it will continue into the new week as well. But it will be some sunnier spells in between, but we do have this band of rain which is moving eastwards across the UK for the rest of this afternoon. It did bring some snow showers overnight last night, but a lot of that snow is now confined towards the southeast of England amongst this persistent rain that we have for the rest of this afternoon. There is some clearer spells across southern England and Wales as well as Northern Ireland, but temperatures here around sort of 10 or 11 degrees, a little bit colder up towards the north where that cloud is a little bit persistent and we're not seeing too many breaks for the afternoon. Now that rain across the southeast will push its way off towards the North Sea. Like I said, there are a few breaks across southern England and Wales, so it will be a brighter end towards the day in between those showers. But further north, that cloud is remaining pretty persistent through the afternoon. We will see a few breaks across northern Scotland as well, but a few of these showers across those Scottish mountains are turning to snow for much of the afternoon as well. Now, as we go through this evening and overnight, those showers will continue to feed in from the northwest. There will be a few breaks across the south, once again, where those showers do start to ease, but it should be a relatively frost-free night, even in those breaks, so temperatures staying above freezing. But towards the northeast of Scotland, where we do have more prolonged breaks in that cloud, temperatures here will dip below freezing, and we could see a touch of frost first thing Monday morning. Now, Monday is much the same. Those showers are continuing through much of the morning. Some of them could be pretty heavy and quite blustery through the afternoon, but there will be some sunnier breaks towards the south and towards the northeast. But temperatures once again around the seasonal average, between sort of 7 and 10 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Make sure you don't miss the chance to grab an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. And that's not all. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, or even Sri Lanka. There's just 2 weeks left to enter. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to Sunday with Michael Portillo. It's very good to be back. Without spoiling St. Valentine's, I hope, I remind you that in A Midsummer Night's Dream, William Shakespeare wrote, "The course of true love never did run smooth." And things are not running very smoothly for Sir Keir Starmer, nor in different ways for Lord Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Let's hope that everything will go impeccably here in the studio during the next 2 hours. As the Prime Minister is tipped to move to the left to remain in office, who stands to gain from that? My panel will opine. We will debate the stark warning that's been issued by a former Chief of the Defence Staff that Britain's armed forces have been hollowed out after years of underinvestment. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor afforded a confidential Treasury briefing about the Icelandic financial crisis to a banker friend while working as a United Kingdom trade envoy, according to the latest Telegraph investigation. I'll discuss the former prince's scandal and how the royal family are reacting with the royal historian and journalist Alexander Larman. And we are off to the circus. Or rather, the Cirque du Soleil will tumble through the studio doors to describe its latest adventure. The world-famous extravaganza has sashayed into the British capital for a stint at the Royal Albert Hall. All of that and more. But first, news headlines from Bethany Elsey.
Michael, thank you. Good morning. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer is adamant he will lead Labour into the next general election, but admitted appointing Lord Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US was a mistake. The Prime Minister rejected suggestions he should resign amid reports of plots within Labour to challenge his leadership. It's understood rebels are quietly lining up the Defence Secretary, John Healey, as a so-called unity candidate, while GB News understands Wes Streeting is plotting to beat Angela Rayner in the race to oust the PM, with an insider suggesting Streeting will launch his bid after the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th of February. But Labour backbencher Graham Downey says the PM has his full support.
The Prime Minister has the full support of the Cabinet. He has the full support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. I fully support the Prime Minister. He does acknowledge this government has made mistakes and he's taken responsibility for those. But equally, this government has done an incredible amount of good things for people in Scotland. We've had increase in the minimum wage. We've lifted 80,000 children out of poverty. We've had record settlements from the UK government to the Scottish government that the SNP have squandered once again.
Meanwhile, the Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel has accused the Prime Minister of desperate politics after he suggested the UK needed closer links with the European Union at the Munich Security Conference.
I completely disagree with his attempt to reverse Brexit. He doesn't have the mandate to do it. His approach is completely wrong. He's not transparent about this. And I have to say, it is desperate politics, basically, to appease his backbenchers and his political party.
A Labour group which helped make Sir Keir Starmer party leader paid for a smear campaign against a Sunday Times journalist. According to the paper, Labour Together hired lobbyists to investigate the personal, political and religious background of the reporter behind a story about the think tank's donations. It's reported the group paid £36,000 to APCO, a US lobbying firm, to discredit the Sunday Times by falsely suggesting links to Russia. At the current rate of progress, the gender pay gap won't close for another 30 years. That's a warning from the